The Thing, Godzilla, monster of monsters, and the mysterious Thing defy man's mightiest weapons. See Godzilla versus the Thing in color and Terrascope.
What is going on, people? What is going on? Welcome to another edition of Collect All Monsters, and we got a special show lined up for you this evening. Yes. Oh, God. Spoiler alert, we're talking about my favorite movie, these two awesome gentlemen's favorite movie in the Godzilla franchise. Oh, my God, because this film just celebrated anniversary not too long ago. Its 59th anniversary on April 29th, 2023. I know we're kind of jumping the shark just a little bit because the film officially celebrates a milestone birthday, 60 years next year. But You know what? There's no law that says that we can't do two of these discussions back to back, you know what I mean? 100%. But we're talking about the awesome 1964 Godzilla film, Mothra versus Godzilla, also known as Godzilla versus the Thing. Oh my God. I'm so looking forward to this discussion. But as you can see, I'm Leslie P. Chambers on behalf of Collect All Monsters, and I'm not here alone. Let me give my Steve Harvey thing, do my introduction for my two fellow co-hosts over here. First and foremost, this guy right here, toy photographer extraordinaire, model kit painter, builder extraordinaire. He's been gone for a little bit, but we'll welcome him back with open arms. The one and the only David Eric Dopko. Welcome back, my brother. How you doing? We missed you. We love you. How does it feel to be back on Collect All Monsters?
Well, it feels great to be back, and thank you so much to all of you guys from the show and everybody out there who watches the show for all of your kind thoughts and just helping me get through this tough time. And I'm just back and ready to go. And what a great way to get back into things than talking about my favorite and your favorites film in the Godzilla zeitgeist. Really, I mean, honestly, so far, nothing that I have seen has surpassed this film for me. It is my go-to film. I love it, and I am just going to say that real quick. It was my father who introduced Godzilla films to me in the first place. It wasn't this movie. It was Monster Zero, which is my second favorite film in the zeitgeist. So I'm just ready to jump into this and talk about this movie. I can talk about this for hours, for days, and we are definitely going to do it on the 60th too. We should invite some more people to join
Absolutely.
us. I know
Definitely.
The three of us are the biggest ones, definitely in Collect All Monsters, but I know Rich Iso is another one who really loves this movie, and he always has. And anyway, enough about me. We also have Mr. Jonathan Portman, who is a huge fan of this film, and he is going to give us some insight on the music of this film. And we're all going to talk about our favorite aspects, and Jonathan loves the music of the Godzilla series, so he's going to dive into that a little bit. But without further ado, here's Jonathan. What's up, Jonathan?
Well, hello, everybody. Hello. Yes. It's great being here with you guys. It's funny, David. I feel like I always, you always say that line. You always feel like you just saw somebody. Well, I literally just saw you this past weekend, and we were thinking about originally doing it on the 29th. But obviously we couldn't do this without Leslie,
Nope.
and we really didn't have the time because we were doing so much stuff. Like there would have been no time to fit this in, so we wanted to make it done right. And so I'm glad we're doing it. I'm glad I'm here with you guys. Thank you for having me. I have ready here. I've got my old fashioned here with my wonderful wife who made this Mosu Goji themed glass for me. So I'm just ready to kick it with you guys and just talk about this great movie you love so much.
Outstanding. Now, real quick, Leslie, but before you get us down, into the conversation. Now, I'm not sure about Janelle, but Keith loves this movie. This is one of the few movies that we can actually watch together that he enjoys because he's a huge Mothra fan, and he loves the Shobijin, and he loves the music, and he loves this movie. And even when we first got together over 30 years ago, one of the first things that I did is I popped in the VHS of Mothra versus Godzilla to see his response, and he was like, "I love this movie." I'm like, "We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. It's gonna be all right." So my question to you, Leslie, because Janelle, I know she's not so much into the genre so much, but how does Sandra feel about this movie? I don't think I know this answer.
Let's see, because we all know Sandra. She's a Godzilla fan, obviously, and we all know that nothing can top GMK. Like GMK is like Jesus to her, and but she does have a she appreciates Mothra vs. Godzilla. Like she knows that's my favorite film, and whenever I do watch it, Sandra, who has an awesome angelic singing voice. I don't know if y'all knew that, but she can actually really, really sing. And there are times when, because in Mothra vs. Godzilla, there are times where the show begins sing to Mothra, and whenever that happens, Sandra will sing right along with the Peanuts. And let me just tell you, no disrespect to the Peanuts, but Sandra kind of blew them out the water with her vocals, But but she enjoys the fact that Mothra vs. Godzilla is my favorite film. I think it really speaks to us as a couple, because both our favorite Godzilla films is when Godzilla is the nasty, evil, badass villain. So, like what you said with Keith, that kind of signifies that me and Sandra were made for each other. You know what I mean? So, but she really appreciates, especially the music. I know Jonathan's going to cover that, but Sandra is really big into the music. Like she's like, once she hears a Godzilla thing that she really enjoys, like she'll just whistle it around the house, like when she's like cleaning or cooking or whatever. And there are random times where she'll actually whistle the Godzilla theme or Mothra theme in this movie alone. And again, it makes me cry when I hear that, because she's a keeper and I love her.
Right on.
Absolutely.
That's most excellent. I love it. Love that. I didn't know she was a singer. This is the first I've heard it. So G-Fest, I think we're going to have to do a little impromptu concert somewhere. It could be a small one. We'll get together and, buy Sandra a little cocktail and see if she'll break into song at some point. I think that could probably happen. That would be great.
I'll work on that.
Okay.
I think she would oblige, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So how we're going to start off with this movie? First of all, again, this movie is like going to church for us, and I know there are certain people out there that kind of find this movie overrated, like Eric Henry. I saw somebody in the chat, Alex Sawyer.
We're already starting.
I know Alex Sawyer always has something kind of like smart or sly to say about the 64. I made it. Sorry, whatever. Yeah, I don't think I have forgotten some of the stuff you said about my favorite Godzilla and my favorite Godzilla film. So I'm going to be nice here, because I am not on this stream alone, but you know what? Screw it. If you don't like this film and don't like Mothra vs. Godzilla or the Mostly Goji, just get the hell out. Just there's the door. Like, bye, see ya. Don't let it hit you with a good Lord split you. Yeah. Bye. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just messing around with Alex. Alex, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
There we go. No.
I mean,
the blue birds are out.
We love you, Alex. We love Eric, and let's just take this time right now to say hello to everybody in the chat room. Thanks everybody for joining us. I can't see all the way over there. Maybe Leslie, you want to point out a couple people who do that, just like we do on the show. Yeah. I know Helmy's there, Steve Sarajoli's there, but I can't see anybody else. So,
I'll do a chat shout out. Of course, Greg Coggin, Nathaniel Plummer,
what's up,
Fancies of Cats, Jedi Granville. Helmy's in the chat. Steve Sarajoli, of course, Alex Sawyer, Varzilla 1. Sandra just made it. What's up, babe?
Woo-hoo.
What's going on? So thank y'all for being here as we talk about Mothra versus Godzilla. But let's go right into the first question. Basically, how we're going to do it, David, you can go first, then Jonathan, then I'll follow up on the real like we normally do when it comes to these streams. But how were you first exposed to this film, Mothra versus Godzilla?
Okay, so I'm a little bit older than you guys and a lot of the people probably in the chat room. I know there's a few people around my age, but so basically back in the 70s in South Jersey, I was lucky enough to get New York channels, Philadelphia channels, and Delaware channels. So we got pretty much everything that was thrown out there in the tri-state area. They called it the tri-state area. And of course we subscribed to TV Guide like every other family did in the 70s, you know. I had already seen Monster Zero, and I think I had seen the original 54, and then probably only King Kong versus Godzilla before I saw Mothra versus Godzilla. So it was pretty early in my journey of seeing these films. And I remember, you guys who lived in the East Coast in the 70s remember the 4:30 movie. Every week for like pretty much the entire 70s, they'd have the 4:30 movie on Channel 7. And what they would do is that they'd have like Planet of the Apes week. They'd have like Outer Space week. They'd have Universal Monster week. And of course they had Godzilla week. And included in the Godzilla week, probably on the first day, was, well, not Mothra versus Godzilla, Godzilla versus the Thing. And of course I'd already knew what Godzilla was at the time. And I watched the movie and I loved it from the very beginning. But a few things stood out to me. Number one, Godzilla did not look the same as he did in King Kong versus Godzilla, which we'll talk about a little later. Godzilla, when he first appears, that epic appearance scene in the gravel pit, where the typhoon washed him ashore, when he shook the sand off, his jowls were kind of flopping around, and I recognized that as a kid. I thought that was pretty cool. Even I came to learn that it was a mistake. It was like one of those happy accidents. But I noticed that, and I saw this before I saw the original Mothra, so I didn't know what Mothra was. This was my first introduction to Mothra as well. So all I know is I loved the movie, and I wanted Godzilla to win. I was very sad when I thought Godzilla maybe wasn't going to win, but of course we all know that he, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, oh well, he defeats the adult Mothra, and then he confronts the larva that hatched from the egg, and they actually defeat him. And that was a little bit disturbing to me as a kid. I did not like to see that. And I just love the movie, and I love the tone of it. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the American version, Godzilla versus the Thing, is probably the most faithful to the original Japanese version that you're going to get.
Absolutely.
These films, they really left hardly anything out. I know there's a couple points that Jonathan doesn't like, and I'll let you talk about that later, that they cut out, but there are very little parts that were cut out. It's essentially the same film. They didn't change any of the music. They didn't get rid of any of Ifukube's score to replace it with bad 1950s American sci-fi music themes like they did in Gigantus the Fire Monster, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Rodan. We can go on and on. They kept it intact. The score was essentially intact. So anyway, I'm going on and on and on, which is easy to do. So I saw it on the 4:30 movie when I was a little kid. I loved it. Jonathan, what was your first experience seeing this amazing film?
Well, David, I always love hearing everyone's stories. It's just so amazing. I love hearing. That's probably one of my favorite things about this series and this fandom is hearing people's stories of how they first came to be watching a movie or experiencing a movie or a certain film in the franchise. So for me, it's weird. Destroy All Monsters was my introduction. My uncle one day gave me a tape, a recorded tape. It was on like the local, station in town. And he was like, here, it just had Destroy All Monsters on it. And he's like, here, watch this, see what you think, and then come back to me. I didn't want to put that thing down. I wanted to keep watching it. I pleaded with them to have them give it to me so I could keep watching it. So then I sort of got wind of more movies. He would show me more. He didn't really show me Mothra versus Godzilla until like 3 or 4 movies in. I can't remember all the ones I watched before, but I do remember once I saw Mothra versus Godzilla, or actually Godzilla versus the Thing. That's all we had at the time. And that was a recorded VHS tape as well. I believe it was either a Monster Vision taping or it was just another local station watch that he would just pop in. TV, you brought up TV Guide. We referenced that too, because even back in the late 80s, you really didn't have any way of knowing what was going to be on TV unless you had a TV Guide. So we subscribed for that.
That's true.
And
that's right.
So I just remember my first time watching that movie. It was the only one that held my attention till the very end, and I was really in it. I was really involved and engrossed in it. Even as a kid, I couldn't really understand a lot of what was going on, deeply rooted stuff with the characters, but it was the only one that held my attention, even with the human stuff. Sometimes it would not hold my attention as much when I was really young, but that one I just remember I was always watching, always engrossed in. The music really caught my eye quickly. Fukube is one of the main reasons why I love score music. I mean, hearing that soundtrack over and over, I just watched the movie, listened to the music over and over again. And just everything about that movie, just coalescing, coming together at that moment. After watching every Godzilla film that preceded that or before that, that one in my mind is my favorite because to me, it feels like the one that came together, brought everything at one point, kind of coalesced into one big epic moment. They really got it. So I can't get enough of this movie. I could talk about it for ages and ages and ages. And so Leslie, without further ado, let's kick it to you because I could just yammer on.
We all could. We gotta rein ourselves in.
I know.
That's kind of hard when you have a movie this awesome in the franchise, quite frankly. And to be honest, to have this as our favorite when you have other standout entries in the franchise, the show period alone, like you have Monster Zero out there, you got 1974 Mechagodzilla out there, you got Biollante, you got GMK, even Shin, right? But to have this as our favorite, I think speaks a lot to the film, quite frankly. My first exposure to the film was, again, I'm going to breeze through this because everybody knows my story. But, my first film was Megalon. Around that time, I started seeing other Godzilla films, at the time, mostly Showa ones, like, 56, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Son of Godzilla, Sea Monster, Gigan, Mechagodzilla 74, 1985, right? Even Godzilla's Revenge. But what happened was they would show Godzilla films like every Saturday where I'm from. And every single one that I knew was coming, whether I seen it before or it was a new one, I will always make it my point to sit there and watch it live, right? But then one week they were promoting that this new film, Godzilla vs. Mothra, was coming. I'm like, wait a minute, I never seen that film before. Back then it was called Godzilla vs. Mothra. This is before I think the 92 version came out. So I saw that, but the thing about it was I actually didn't see it live, and I did that on purpose because I had a tape, mind you. But the reason why I didn't see it live because while they were promoting the film, they didn't show any of the clips of Godzilla and Mothra in the film. They actually showed clips of Godzilla fighting Mothra from Sea Monster or Godzilla fighting Mothra from Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. So I actually thought it was going to be another like one of those Godzilla's Revenge type of things where it's a movie built around stock footage. So even I was still going to see it, but it didn't make me super excited to want to see it live, right? But then once I did see it, I was like, yeah, this is like touching the face of God. Like this is awesome. And every single film I've seen after that point, Biollante, GMK, sorry Sandra, don't put me on the couch tonight, but Destroyer, 2000, even Final Wars. Well, the Final Wars is like low bar, so anything's better than that film. Shoot, watching a black screen is better than Final Wars. But Monsterverse, no Godzilla film that has come out since I watched that film has trumped it for being in my top spot. It's my favorite. Like it is like just that film is like sacred to me. It is sacred. It is funny that the first Godzilla film that I first saw that made me a fan was the superhero Godzilla. But this film made me appreciate Godzilla more so as a darker character, more so a villain, quite frankly. I think he's better as a villain. Don't get me wrong. We all love the superhero Godzilla, but I kind of prefer him as a villain, and Mothra vs. Godzilla kind of like cemented that for me. So that's how I got exposed to this film. And again, I don't see any new Godzilla film topping it, because we got two that's coming, one for the Monsterverse next year and one coming from Toho in a handful of months. But I think it's safe to say that Mothra vs. Godzilla will never, ever be topped. And that's how awesome the film is, in my opinion. So.
I think you're right.
Amen.
I can't argue with any of that. And I want to hit something home that you both said. You both saw it on VHS, right? I saw it before VHS was even available. There was no VHS. So I had to wait until this movie came back on again. Luckily, the channels played Mothra versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus the Thing. I'm going to refer to it as that back then. They played it quite often. So I did get to see it, you know, and really enjoy it. And I just was like, man, if I and like John Ruffin and I were the only two people that I know that used to do this, because he's about my age. We used to record from the television. At least we could listen to the music and actually hear the dialogue and the action without actually seeing the picture. And the only other way to do that was buying one of those Super 8 projectors and getting the Super 8, you know, film version, which I always wanted, but I never did get that. I never got one. So, but anyway, I just wanted to point that out because my ass had to wait till it came back on TV again. You know, just like The Wizard of Oz, another one of my favorite movies. They played it every Easter, and I couldn't see it until the next Easter. They did not play it. They only played it like one time a year. So, yeah, man, I just dated myself. Shh, almost hit a bad word. Boom. Anyway, so let's move on to our next, actually our first sort of like topic for discussion about this film. Now, what's that, Leslie? I think you have it in front of you.
Your overall general thoughts of the film, just your initial thoughts or whatever. But what do you think overall about this film? Obviously, we're highly praising it, so it's gonna be really high. But what's your overall general raw thoughts about Mothra versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus the Thing?
Just like you guys said. Initially, I loved it, and then as I got older and I got to see and learn about the making of this film, it just meant even more to me, and it means even more to me. And I can watch it over and over again. It never gets old. I always find something new that I never noticed before. We sort of, you know, Jonathan sort of alluded to the fact that even as a kid, it held our attention, even though we didn't necessarily know all the nuances of what was actually going on with the characters. But the characters, the ensemble cast, fit so well together, and we were interested in what was going on with them as well as the monster action. And then what Leslie said, Godzilla was still considered a villain and still a product of the nuclear bomb. You know, there's still a lot of nuclear references, a lot of danger, a lot of fear. Godzilla was scary, and I think this is sort of the first time that we ever saw Godzilla as sort of a force of nature, because he wasn't really out to get anybody, but he just plowed through everything and nothing could stand in his way. I think he really did want to kill Mothra, and he wanted to do something with that egg. But anyway, my general thoughts, it's still my favorite, like these guys both said, because everything comes together. The cast, the story, the music, the directing, everything comes together. It is truly the magnum opus of Toho in the golden age and beyond. If I may be so bold, it's just great. It's a fantasy. It's a straight up fantasy movie, and there's a little bit of horror in there. There's a little bit of comedy, but not too much comedy.
Yeah,
just enough. I mean, some of the films in the series, later films, rely a little too heavily on comedy. And this is before Godzilla became sort of really anthropomorphic. Like, he doesn't really have a human sort of, you know, gestures or nuances like he did for the first time in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, where we actually saw him interact with other monsters and, you know, sort of like display human type emotions. He doesn't really do that in this movie, except for like anger and frustration, really. But yeah, that's my general thoughts are it's fantastic. I liked it as a child. I love it as an adult, and I will continue to love it the more I learn about it. And, you know, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into why we love it so much. But my general thoughts are it's a great movie. And I think everybody out there, if you haven't seen it a lot of times, give it another chance. Watch it again. Look at it with new eyes. It is really, really an amazing, fun film to watch. So, Jonathan, take it away. I mean, I could say more, but I won't.
Well, David, magnum opus, you perfectly stated it, man. This, to me, definitely felt like the coalescing of so many talents coming together to make one hell of a movie. And I don't think anything, even in the golden era, preceding or coming after that really met up to this sort of like tone. I think what generally speaks out to me is the tone of the movie. It very much is a very serious film. We get that from the jump from the main title with that main title song or main title track with the monsoon happening. And just from that point on, really never lets up. Like you said, there's moments of levity, some moments of comedy, but Honda always loved to sprinkle that in. Even in the more serious films, he loved to sprinkle a little bit here and there. You could tell this one, they meant to take this completely, totally seriously. Godzilla is brooding. He is a stalker in this movie. He just keeps going. He's like a giant, like you said, he's a giant force of nature. Nothing can stop him. They're just trying to deter him. They're like, well, we can't really kill him, so let's just deter him from the population. Like, get him out in the valley, get him to the ocean. But he just doesn't care. Godzilla does not care in this movie. He gets up, he wakes up, and he's like, all right, let's go. He goes straight to that factory once he comes out of the which, by the way, the emergence scene is one of the best, if not the best emergence in all of the series. I mean, his best entrance next to like Terror Godzilla, I think. Like those two, and they're completely two different tones. They have two different tonalities, but this one, the way the tail comes out and is wiggling around, and then like the snap zoom on everyone's faces of horror, like, oh, it's Godzilla, like, and they all go crazy, start running. The moment Godzilla is complete terror in this movie. He almost is very emotionless. A lot of people kind of joke that he's a little sleepy, maybe looks a little hungover. He probably is. He's probably knocked around by that monsoon. He's like, God, we can get out of here. He's shaking it off, whatever. But I love the seriousness of this movie. I love the music. I love the visuals. I mean, we're going to definitely dive into some more specific things. But just the emotional impact of this movie, the ensemble cast, everything about its vibrancy, it just sticks out. And it forgoes any other maybe little minor problems I have with this movie, as we've discussed a little bit before. There are, not every movie is perfect.
Little teeny things we'll talk about at the very end. Little teeny things.
But as an overall sticking point, this movie is a 10 out of 10. It will continue to be a 10 out of 10 till I die. I'm pretty sure it's going to stay that way. I can tell you guys, unequivocally, it is that movie. It is Mothra vs. Godzilla is that movie. So without further ado.
Wow. Jonathan, if I may expand on your talk about the opening sequence, his appearance. I just thought of this in my head as you're talking. So of all the appearances in every one of Godzilla's films, they all have their own thing. Now, this one is especially impactful because it ties in everything that's happened previously or prior to that scene. So it starts off, the typhoon washes all this stuff into the area that they're trying to make into, the industrial area of the prefecture. And the photographer, Junko, is taking pictures of the devastation, right? And that's how it starts. And then when the scene and then they find the piece of Godzilla's skin. I think there's a lot of debate on what that is. I think we've established it's actually a piece of Godzilla's skin, the radioactive thing. And then they go back to do more testing, and it's the same area that the film opened as the very same area. And then she's out there doing what she does. That's her character. She's a photographer, an amateur photographer, and she's trying to get, a shot, and the mud keeps moving. And it's like, he's like, come on, let's go. Stop fooling around, literally. And she's like, I can't. There's something moving in the mud out there. And then he just starts looking. Then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and they don't expect it. So what I'm trying to say through all of that is, they set it up in the very opening scene. Okay. It's everything is there. She's a photographer. They're trying to build on this area. And then all of a sudden, that's where the action begins. They have already set it up. It's not some arbitrary, it doesn't just like pop out from the ocean. He doesn't do that. They set it up, and that's subliminal. We don't know that they've taken the time to sort of set us up for that scenario. That's why it's impactful for so many of us, even though we can't really articulate why. And anyway, I just had to throw that out there because I'm going way too deep now. But
No,
it's
I mean, that's a perfect
it's
point that you brought up.
it's one of those things. So Leslie, what are your I know out of the three of us, you're the most passionate about certain aspects of this film. So what were your initial thoughts about this film? Like what do you think?
What I took away from this film was this film really checks off all the boxes of what I personally look for in a Godzilla film. Does it have great characters, human characters, which
Check.
is important, people? Again, I know some people have this weird mentality that the only reason we watch movies like this or Godzilla movies is for Godzilla. And that's fine to a certain extent. But again, as I've always said, a great human story to go along with the monster action that leads into the monster action is kind of vital in these films, quite frankly. And this movie is an example of a great human story before Godzilla even shows up, before even Mothra shows up in a lot of ways. So it checks off that box. It has great special effects. It has a great, awesome score. The suit for Godzilla is awesome. The prop for Mothra and her character is awesome. Great fight scenes. It's like it again, when it comes to a monster movie, this thing checks off all the boxes. But what I appreciate about this film the most is the fact that Godzilla, even though Mothra takes top billing, Godzilla is really the star of this film. And what I appreciate about this film is like when you think about the first three films prior to this one, 54, 55, and 62, Godzilla is relatively introduced early on, whether you hear his roar off screen or they establish his presence some way, shape, or form, whether you hear him or whether you see him. The cool thing about this film is that Godzilla is not referenced or mentioned not one time, like in the first 20 or 30 minutes, because you're so in tune with the Mothra story. The Mothra story sometimes is so good, sometimes you actually forget Godzilla's in the film because they don't mention him at all. But when he shows up, it now becomes his movie, his story. It's not about the egg anymore. It's not about Kumiyama and Torahata. It's not about the banter between the reporters. It's about Godzilla, and I love that. I love that mentality when it comes to the people in this film. How when Godzilla shows up, everything just stops. Godzilla is so established in this film as such an awesome, fearsome threat that again, when he shows up, people are freaking out. And that is something I wish they would have done with him in King Kong versus Godzilla. Now, don't get me wrong, in King Kong versus Godzilla, he comes back after 7 years, but I think there were people that he was more feared in that film because it's a giant monster, right? In this movie, it's like Godzilla, he's back. And people are like, okay, we're screwed. It's like, there's nothing we can do. And I love the military stance on this film. Like, we got to go after that thing. We have to kill him before he kills us.
Right.
And I love how they portray Godzilla. Even when Godzilla is not on screen, you can feel his presence. Once he comes into the story, again, once he takes over the movie and makes it his movie, even when he's not on screen, the characters are fearful. They're coming up with plans to try and take him down. Even the plans that they have in place for Godzilla, as far as the military, they know they can't kill him, or at least they know they have a strong chance of not killing him. So they have to base their plans around the route that Godzilla is supposedly going. Again, going back to what David said with him being a natural disaster, a walking natural disaster. And I just love that. I just so love that about Godzilla's character in this film, which I think was the original interpretation of the monster in 54. They kind of got away from that in 55 and 62, but I'm glad that they were able to come back to that before Godzilla went full bore into being the over-the-top, silly, goofy monster that he would become in the Showa series. Don't get me wrong, we all love that Godzilla, but I love that at least Honda, because Honda was against Godzilla becoming this goofy type of character. He wanted the monster to stay serious. Right? Subaraya was the one that felt like they should make him more lighthearted characters to appeal to children, to try to garner to try to widen their audience. Honda was against that, quite frankly. So I'm glad in this film, before we got the Ghidorah and Sea Monster in the 70s films, that we saw at least the badass villain Godzilla make one more appearance before he would change his ways for good for the remainder of the Showa series. So that's my overall general first initial thoughts of Mothra vs. Godzilla. That's really is about Godzilla.
That's a really great
well
point,
stated.
Leslie. And you said it, and I never really made the connection. The 64 Godzilla, the incarnation of the 64, is only second to the 54 in ferocity and fear. Like, he's a little bit goofy, he's a little bit anthropomorphic doing his thing in King Kong versus Godzilla. He's not really for whatever reason, he's not super terrifying in Godzilla Raids Again, as far as I'm concerned. But this Godzilla, people are afraid of him. The Japanese people are in fear for their lives and their cities, and they're. I've never seen the military try so hard to destroy a monster. Right?
No. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And one more thing that we didn't mention, which may or may not come up in when we go down the road a little bit. This was the first time that Toho took two existing characters from the film and combined them in one film. King Kong was never a Toho property. Anguillus, that was the first time we saw him. This is the very first, because Mothra had her own movie and Godzilla had his own movie. This is the first time two Toho properties came together to make one epic film. So that's a milestone in itself.
World building.
World
building.
Yeah. Right. Now
because
that's
then they knew they could build off of that in the next
That's
movie.
what I call world building. But anyway, yeah, that I just wanted to hit that home. This is the very last time we get to see Godzilla as a true threat to mankind in Japan. And the way, and you're right, you said it, Honda definitely got the last word when it came to the final product of this film, because this one's really not for the kids. I mean, the kids are running from Godzilla in this one. The kids almost get, trampled, essentially. So Honda definitely, had the last word on the final outcome of this movie. So anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely.
All right, the second question. What are your favorite aspects / scenes of this film? Again, there's so many to choose from, but what are your favorite moments?
Forever.
What are your favorite moments?
Oh, go ahead.
I'll tell you what. Let's narrow them down to three. Your top three favorite moments.
Okay.
Your top three favorite moments.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
All right. So first and foremost, if I had to pick only one, it would definitely be the scene that was only cut for U.S. theaters. It's
yeah.
And I'm still hoping and praying, and I know all the experts are going to say that print doesn't exist anymore. It was destroyed. It was only blah 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 blah. I don't care. Find it. Make it happen. Make it work. Find the master print for the
Get those negatives.
Scene. Get those negatives. Include it in the what we're all waiting for, the 4K restored version of this film. And I would love to see it not just as a supplemental. I would love to see it incorporated into the movie. Okay. That scene is one of the best scenes in the movie. And it's what Leslie was talking about. And it's what Jonathan was talking about. Godzilla is just being bombarded and they're trying to destroy him. And they're saying, okay, so you got to think back to 1964. Tensions were still a little bit, high with the U.S. and the Japanese, okay, because the war didn't end all that long ago, and there's still hard feelings and tensions. The fact that they had to go to the U.S. and say, hey, let's use some atomic weapons on our shores to try to kill this monster, that says volumes right there. That says volumes right there. I mean, I'm assuming those frontier missiles were atomic or nuclear or something of that nature. But and the way that scene is shot, it's so realistic and it's so simple and it's so effective, and you're not really sure that it's not going to work, because that last scene, you're not sure if Godzilla's going to come out of this. I mean, those missiles, mean business, but of course they were ineffective, and Godzilla just sort of gets up, brushes the sand off, and moves on to the next thing. But I do love that scene. They do use a lot of the Toho stock gaijin actors that they have in the Showa series, and I would just love to see that included in a future print of that movie, because I just love everything about it. And it's Godzilla against the military, and I think those parts of Godzilla films are my favorites. Godzilla against the military, man versus the monster. Monster battles are great and everything, but you get so much of man versus monster in this movie. That there it is, and there. Thank you, Kyle. There it is.
Yes.
We're just gonna sit back and take a look at this. It's just so he's just kind of walking on the beach, and it's just amazing, and I just love it, and it's funny because this scene is actually included in several of the Japanese trailers for the film, but it never actually shows up in the actual Japanese cut of the movie. The only way to see it legitimately and officially is one of the collectibles that Jonathan will show later, and I won't steal his thunder, but there's only really one way to see it, and of course I have it, and these scenes are very precious to me. So that's number one. Number two, oh gosh, number two probably has to be the battle between the adult Mothra and Godzilla.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm going to talk about one specific portion of this film, because this particular sequence was filmed with a high-speed lens, and in combination with a strobe effect, to almost give the feeling and the vibe of stop motion. You all know what I'm talking about. It's when Godzilla is on his back and Mothra is hovering over him and sort of just flapping and sort of keeping him down so he can't get up and attack her in any other way. And then, of course, that's when the weapon of last resort, the yellow powder, is utilized. But that scene, it's that the whole sequence is amazing. I mean, they use puppets, they use the marionette of the Mothra prop, they use Nakajima in the suit. It's just so the miniatures, the music, everything comes together in that scene, and culminating in that strobe like effect where it looks like stop motion. And I think that's brilliant. And finally, the very last scene that I absolutely love, it's right when Godzilla is almost to the island, Iwa Island. and there is a scene, there's music playing, the Mothra theme is going back, the Shobijin are singing, and then it's got Godzilla's theme, and the themes kind of meld together, and you see Godzilla landing on the shore, and you see the Mothra is like just coming right after him. It's just like I just get goosebumps when I hear that, and it's just amazing to me, and I love how they were able to sort of marry those two scenes to make it harmonious, and there's so many more, but those are the top three for me. And of course there's so many human scenes, but I'm just going to talk about the major monster scenes. But yeah, those are mine. Jonathan, what are your three favorite scenes or parts of this movie?
Yeah, narrowing it to three is a little tough, but it's a good decision, Leslie. Good decision. David, I love those. They're all great scenes. Honestly, it's funny. I have three scenes that aren't necessarily the same, but it's a good thing. I was really happy that you didn't choose the scenes I'm about to say. So the first scene is one of my favorites. It's my favorite emergence of all time.
Oh, yeah, well,
His favorite entrance is the emergence scene. We just talked about it for a little bit. But I gotta say, the way that it ramps up. I'm a film editor, and I will tell you that the way that they build up the tension through that scene has not really. I don't think it's been sense in that form, in that fashion. The way that, like Leslie said, made a perfect example. They didn't mention Godzilla, not even once. You don't even hear his name. And then what's that moving? You see the ground, the visual effect of the ground moving up and down, and then you see the steam coming out. And the way that the sound design's building, and you see that the characters, that you can kind of hear people kind of gasping, and the sound's getting louder and louder. It's like when the scene in The Godfather, before Al Pacino shoots I forget the main guy in the first movie. You hear the trains going real loud, and you can hear the confusion and the tension in his head before he's about to make that fatal decision. Same thing's happening here, except it's all atmospheric. You hear that loud noise starting to, you hear the rumble, and then all of a sudden, and there's no music yet, by the way. It's all sound design. And then all of a sudden, off screen, it's not even centered. It's like right to the right of the little hut that's been like kind of turned to its side. Yeah. You see the tail pop out.
Yeah.
Come into frame. And that is when you hear the theme of themes. Bump, 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 bump. And the way that it's presented, and I will talk about this more when we get to the music part, because I cannot wait to discuss that. But the way that music hits, and you see the optical printing of, you see like that, the matting of like the people running along the shoreline as just frantic, and like people are going every which direction and they're getting in cars and moving, and Godzilla gets up and it's like the snap zooms. Everything about that scene is so epic. It's so serious and so dire and so tense. To me, one of the best, if not the best, entrance in the series.
Can't argue with that. Cannot argue with that.
And that's just all of the elements of filmmaking come together in such a perfect, harmonious fashion. So that's scene number 1. Now, scene number 2 is one of the greatest moments of levity and gives us a moment of pause. And it's the scene again. When I was a kid, I got emotional and I got the chills. When I was a kid, I couldn't understand what was kind of happening. When you see Infant Island for the first time, you see them kind of get, all three of them kind of see the impact humanity has done to this island, this peaceful island that's become this like shell of itself. And then the one calming moment of that whole scene, you hear Sacred Springs sort of in the distance, and they're basically led to this beautiful, lush Garden of Eden, essentially, where the Shobijin are presented, and their backs are to them at this point. They're just harmoniously singing Sacred Springs, and it's such a beautiful, tragic, melancholic song, and it's very lamenting, and there's a lot of deep darkness in it, as much as it is very beautiful and tear-jerking. And when you see the three of them kind of kneel down, they haven't presented themselves yet. They let them finish. It's like, that's one of the problems I have with Godzilla versus the Thing. The U.S. cuts that scene in half.
Cuts it in half.
You hear one verse, and then you hear the end of it. Honda lets this whole moment play out. It's not cut down. It's not stripped down. It's just they're burying themselves in this moment. And then that's when they turn. It's like, hi, what's up? It's like basically in that scene, you get the struggle and the tragedy of the people there, and what people have, and what humanity, what the outside world has done to this society. And that to me encapsulates so much of the movie. So much of the heart of the movie takes place in that scene. And then we have Yuriko Hoshi's wonderful, beautiful, impassioned speech, and Takarada's as well. They all have their moment. Everyone has their little moment of like, why can't we learn to trust? If you need to learn to trust each other, we're very sorry what happened to you, but Godzilla is destroying destroying our lands, killing our people. We're in trouble. We need your help. And in that moment, there's so much going on in that sequence.
You're right.
That's my second. So my third scene is and it's my favorite for a couple reasons, and mainly for, again, another epic Godzilla entrance, essentially, and it's very surprising. It's right before the Iwa Island confrontation. It's when the bell is sounding.
He rises above the mountain.
Running.
Yeah.
And the principal is like, we have to get the children. They're on the island. They're stuck on the island. And they're like,
the children.
Yeah, and then Godzilla pops his head over the mountain, and you hear the Godzilla theme again. And they look back. He's like, too late. Get the fuck out of here.
I'm out. Yep. Screw the children. I'm out.
Dude, and that's another scene that I think is so impactful, because it's like there's so much tension again in that moment, and then he kind of just comes down the shoreline and just wrecks some of the village, and then be off on your way, essentially. And I love the shot of like when you see the guys ringing the bell, you see a little Godzilla there in the back, you see the tower, and you see Godzilla come along. It's like, oh, you are so done, my friend. You are so done. But another reason why it's my favorite scene is because of sort of the behind the scenes element of it. There's a story where Ifukube and Honda had a rare disagreement on this specific scene. And Ifukube said, this does not need score or music. It's perfect on its own. It stands by itself. We don't need music here. So on the day of the screening, when they're all sitting there, all the heads are watching this movie, and that part comes up, and you see him come over the hill, and you hear the Godzilla theme, you hear his emergence theme again. Ifukube kind of slowly looks at Honda and gives him a look, and Honda just kind of like,
yeah, I heard about that.
Basically goes against him and says, no, we kind of need, and honestly,
he was right.
It works. He was right, because
right.
you don't get that sort of emotional pull just having him come over the hill, because there's not really much going on at that time. Like, it's such a surprising moment that it catches us off guard just as much as the characters. So you kind of need that little emotional lift from the music, I think, to make that really truly work, because then you have Evil Island coming after that. So it's like a perfect segue into that moment. So those are my three. Those are my top three. And
those are amazing. And I like those too. And you know,
they're also great, right?
One more thing. Here I go again. The speech. We don't get a speech like that in almost any of the other entries in the Godzilla series. That speech where the chief says they have the audacity to ask these people who humanity has destroyed their beautiful island, right? This is before they saw the other. And they have the audacity to ask for Mothra to help. And when they wouldn't even return the egg, that's all they asked. And the chief goes on to say, you played around with the fires of the gods. This is your retribution. This is what's happening. And then Yuriko Hoshi goes on to say, well, you know, Godzilla is killing the good along with the evil. That right is sacred. It's not your right or our right to say who should live and who should die. So please, please, please. It's just a great speech. And you know, you don't think about it so much for like what's considered a B science fiction movie. There's some deep stuff in here, you know, and the nuclear references are so front and center, probably only second to 54. And that's what Godzilla is. That's why it hits home for us so much. Godzilla was created by man's, you know, toying around with powers that he should not toy around with. And you know, I know John Ruffin feels the same way. And that's why we feel that aspect of Godzilla is missing, sorely missing from the MonsterVerse. That's Godzilla's essence. And they don't make any reference to that whatsoever. And I think that is one of the reasons that it doesn't hit home with me at all, because, and even in the later films, they don't make reference to any other, you know, of the origins of Godzilla, how he was created and how it's man's punishment for screwing around with nuclear power. And anyway, sorry, I'm going on and on and on. Leslie, go for it. Go.
I mean,
I'll keep talking and tell me to shut up.
To touch on that before I go in my top three, but honestly, could you blame them if they didn't send Mothra? If they weren't willing to comply?
Not at all.
Could you blame
them?
Not at all.
Nope.
Not at all.
Nope.
They did it very much out of the goodness of because they're so good. Like they're like, you know,
they're pure. They're innocent.
We're going to scold you.
We're going to do it
for what you had done, but that doesn't mean we're not going to help you. In that moment, they kind of realize, you know what? When a push comes to shove, they're just great. They're just good people, and they want to help.
And not only that,
they didn't need to.
Not only that, Leslie, poor Mothra was on the way out.
Cold.
I mean, Mothra was waiting to die. That's why, you know, every single ounce of power that she had left was put towards helping humanity. That's why the battle, I mean, Mothra would have been a little bit more powerful if she was like, you know, young and in her vigor. She was ready to die. She was going to die on that rock. She never went back to die on her island where she was born. But, you know, anyway, I would not blame them one bit if they said, no way, nope, not going to do it.
I mean,
100%.
I mean, because from their point of view, it's like Mothra is their god. You know, Mothra is what they worship. So you telling us that you want our god to be like a sacrificial lamb? Because again, it was revealed that Mothra is dying at that point, and she's going up against a monster where she knows that she won't be able to win. So in their mind, it's like, look, we already came to you and asked you, could we get our egg back? Honestly, they didn't have to ask for anything. That was their egg. They had every right to it. But it's just that weird mentality. Like if a football lands, if a kid kicks a football on my property, all of a sudden we had this mentality, like here in America or at least everywhere. Oh, that football is mine now. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
Yeah,
that's a very arrogant point of view to have. But again, I would not have blamed them not one bit. And when they came to the island and say, you know what, we need Mothra. No, that's your problem. Godzilla's your problem. You weren't kind to us. So give us a reason. Aside from them egg being there, give us one good solid reason. Yes, the woman did give a good reason, but still at the end of the day, it's still the infant island people that's still getting shortchanged. Again, you know what I'm saying? So it shows how much character they have. But my top 3 favorite moments, I'm gonna breeze through these. You already talked about one. Jonathan. I love the entrance, like their entrance again. And when you think about epic entrances of Godzilla, he's had a few, several.
Yes,
You know, he had
Definitely.
he had one in the original film in Odo Island. He had one in
Oh,
the
I love
previous
that one.
film, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Monster
Iceberg.
Zero, Biollante, Terra Mecha Godzilla, GMK. I'm sorry, David, you might not like this, but I actually do like the entrance from 2014. I
Me
do
too.
like that one.
I do like that. I like that entrance.
That's a good entrance.
I'm
That's a
not
good
gonna
entrance.
lie.
That's a good
That's a
entrance.
very good entrance.
But I think Mothra vs.
Why?
Godzilla is the best. And just again, like you said, Jonathan, the build up to that scene, you know, just the ground moving, the steam coming out, the momentary silence where nothing happens and everybody's like breathing like a sigh of relief. Then that turns into like panic when the tail comes up. Then the dorsal plates just slowly come out the ground. Then he rises up. Then you see people in the background slowly like just pacing. And then once Godzilla comes in full view, they all of a sudden start sprinting. Then you see them going into their cars. Like the sheer sight of Godzilla just makes people like, nah, I'm gone. That's it. No. It's not the mentality that we have in King Kong vs. Godzilla, where a kid wanted to go up to him. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to a zoo, children. Let's go.
All right.
It's nothing like that. It's like Godzilla shows up and everybody's like, nah.
They don't want to see this Godzilla. They don't want to see him.
Dude, literally, as soon as the tail comes out, people just start running. It's like,
yeah,
yep,
exactly.
I'm out.
Exactly, because they know exactly who it is, and they was like, you know what, I want no parts of that. So that's my first favorite scene. The second one, this is kind of like a subtle moment, and I'm sure once I explain it to you, you're gonna be like, oh, I know what you're talking about. But I love the scene where when Torahata and Kumiyama come to blows in the hotel room, and Torahata get his face all blooded, right? Then they show a close-up of his face, and it's all fuzzy. And then he turns his head. All of a sudden, his face he's trying to get the cobwebs out, and then his face just turns to sheer fright. And then it cuts to Godzilla coming from the distance, with the trees. It's like once you saw his face turn to fear, you know exactly what he was looking at. You don't get a full look at Godzilla, like a unobstructed view of him. He's like hidden behind some trees, but you see him partially moving through the trees, coming towards the hotel with that menacing thing behind him. Oh, I just love that scene so much, because that moment shows that up until that point, Torahata and Kumiyama were basically the villains of the film. But now the true villain of the film shows up and takes out the first villains, kind of like what we saw in Rodan, you know, where the bugs, what we thought was the real villain, but then Rodan shows up. It's the same thing here with Godzilla. So that's my second favorite moment. You know what? My third favorite moment, I'm gonna give Mothra some love here. I actually love when Mothra finally shows up, like when Godzilla smashes the incubator and he has, you know, full view of the egg. You know, he's just staring at it, right? We don't know what he's gonna do. Like he could have smashed it, or maybe he's just gonna just move on. We don't know what he's gonna do. Whatever it is not good. But then all of a sudden they show Mothra coming in from the distance, and you hear that battle music, and it's like, and when Godzilla slowly turns his head up like this, that moment when Mothra shows up, I'm like, oh, it's awesome. Like, oh God, the king of the monsters versus the queen of the monsters in an epic battle. Oh, I just love that scene. Those are my top 3 favorite scenes right there.
Those are
absolutely
good. Damn, they're all
Leslie,
good. And Leslie, your scene is one of the few that works better in the American version than the Japanese version, because in the American version, when, you know, Godzilla, you know, is about to do whatever he's going to do to the egg, there's a big pause in the Japanese version, and then Mothra comes. And then in the American version, there's no pause. It just cuts to the music.
The blaring trumpets are great.
Right? It's like right there. There is no pause. And that pause sort of like, okay, just... So sometimes when they make cuts, it actually helps the pacing of the film. And that's just one little teeny tiny thing that actually works better in the US version. But anyway, this is great. I love this. I'm loving this.
I same here, Leslie. I want to bank off of what you said. One of your favorite scenes being the hotel sequence, because I love that part from a technical aspect, and this is something that Honda didn't do a lot of either. But it was like you could tell he was playing with techniques in this movie, or the cinematographer was as well. Because when Torahata kind of like he's like coming to, and he kind of looks out the window, you can see it's blurry. He's kind of
Mhm.
coming to, and then you see the camera blur and like focus itself into seeing Godzilla. It's like, oh crap, there he is. So like another moment right there. It was just, it's perfect. I love it. I
There's
love it
so
from
many
all
moments,
aspects.
and it also shows that money means nothing. Like in that
Yeah.
moment, all that money can't do anything. You're going to get crushed. You're going to get
And what
destroyed.
greed
So
does to
what greed
people. I
does
mean,
too. Yeah, that's
ultimately, it
the
got them
ultimate
smashed to
lesson.
bits.
Yep, got them smashed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the third question. The third question is, what do you think is the relevance and significance of this film to the rest of the Godzilla series? I think I kind of touched about that, about world building and stuff like that. But what do you think is its overall significance as it relates to the rest of the franchise?
Well, we sort of like all three of us have touched on this in
Yeah.
our discussion so far. One of the main things that I had said earlier, this is the first time that Toho had pit two of its characters together from separate films. It's the very first time that we got to see a monster that Toho created that had her own film, and another monster that Toho created had his own film come together, and it just seemed to work. And it's the last time. It's important because it is the last time that we get to see Godzilla as a true villain. It's important because, as I mentioned before, Godzilla's ties to his nuclear origin is still very present. Um, there's great continuity between King Kong versus Godzilla and Godzilla versus and Mothra versus Godzilla, because we all know that both monsters topple over the the cliff at Bayatami Castle, and King Kong swims back to Faroe Island. I always assumed that Godzilla got covered by Earth. He's just covered. The landslide kind of covered him. That's why he didn't come up. He didn't run away. He didn't do anything. He was just covered by the landslide. And then he was under there all that time. And then that big typhoon sort of, washed everything over to where, I mean, it was still Japan, to that part of where the origin, I mean, the initial appearance happened. So the continuity is good between, I mean, of course, Godzilla doesn't look anything like he did in King Kong versus Godzilla. I mean, his whole features have changed, and we're going to talk about that later when we talk about the suit. But I do think it's important to have some kind of a continuity in place between the film before. And they knew who Godzilla was. They knew what Godzilla was in this part of the film. This particular movie, Godzilla had already been established, so they knew what he was. It's just important because it established that Toho properties can work together, and they continue to do it. Later on in 1964, with Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, they added Rodan into the mix and a new monster, King Ghidorah. So they added another Toho property that had done a solo film into it, and then they introduced a new monster, King Ghidorah, and then they kept doing that throughout the series. The only movies that really introduced new characters were the Island series. In Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, it just completely introduced new monsters we hadn't seen before, and Son of Godzilla too. We hadn't seen anything before, but pretty much everything else we have kind of seen up until we get the Smog Monster. That's the first time we get to see some different stuff, but
off the wall stuff.
Yeah, it's important because, as I mentioned before, and as we talked about, it's one of the few U.S. interpretations that kept the score initially intact. It kept the script initially intact. Aside from a few tiny minor omissions, it's essentially the same movie. The dubbing is top notch. The dubbing actors really sort of match the character personalities for the most part. Not like some of the other ones where the voices don't fit at all. You could follow the story so easily, and it's the only one where we actually get a scene that isn't in the Japanese version. So we get our own scene for the U.S. Market. So for those reasons, I think it's very relevant to the Godzilla series. And again, it's a fan favorite. Those in the know love this movie. And those who don't love it will hopefully eventually love it when they listen to our discussion, and they're going to look upon it with new eyes. So, how about you, Jonathan?
Totally. Wow. You actually touched on one of the ones one of the ones I was thinking about. The main one being the Toho shared universe. You know, first time you're bringing in another established character into this,
as you
and
said,
keeping that world building going, because then it really just kind of, they're like, okay, that was really successful. Let's continue doing that. Let's bring Ronan in. You know, let's just keep continuing to build that universe. And I gotta say, one of the things I'm going to choose to kind of discuss a little bit is musically, right? You know, I was probably going to go there at some point. Akira Ifukube, very much so would play around with certain themes, especially Godzilla's theme. In King Kong vs. Godzilla, you get the first iteration officially of it in its completed form, right? There's just a few notational differences. I liken that score, especially his theme, to Godzilla is this sort of, you're in awe of him. He's like a majestic sort of, it's like a majestic, regal sort of theme, right? He's imposing, he's big, he's large. It's like, look at, there's Godzilla. You don't really get a sense of terror because tonally the movie is very different. So you don't get really a sense of terror from him. You get a sense of awe from him. Now, on the flip side, when he gets up Mothra versus Godzilla, he takes that same theme and he reworks it. Just certain little notational differences to make it more of a brooding, more serious, more darker imposed theme. And then that theme would then stick. It continued to the Heisei era. You'd even hear it the rest of the way in the Showa era until they changed it to the military theme more heroically in Terror Megagodzilla and such. So I feel like from a music aspect, it sort of helped inform his style and what he wanted to achieve going forward for the rest of the series. You hear a lot of that same music and a lot of its power and the cues of the power of those cues transfer over to future films.
Absolutely.
That did not have to do with Godzilla necessarily. Frankenstein Conquers the World, War of the Gargantuas. Tonally, a lot of those cues kind of make their way in some sense or form in future films, and it continues to be the way. Godzilla's theme stuck from Mothra vs. Godzilla all the way to the Heisei era, and it never changed until Ifukube stepped down. It never changed, or unless he wasn't scoring it. So, to me, musically, there's a lot going on. That's what's very significant about this film. Tonally, it's the last Godzilla movie in the golden era, like you said, David, in the Showa era, that truly showcases how Godzilla is, how much of a force of nature he is. Yeah, in the Heisei era, they kind of brought him back to that in '84, but then he became more of an ambiguous sort of anti-hero where he'd fight the monster, but you forget he'll still destroy the city. He's not playing favorites. It was more, you were more rooting for Godzilla in the Heisei era. That was the tone they were going for. Now you're rooting kind of, for me, I'm kind of rooting against Godzilla in a way in Mothra vs. Godzilla. He's not nice. I'm watching the movie and I'm like, I'm kind of rooting for Mothra, in a sense. Now that doesn't mean I'm like, I hate Godzilla, but it's sort of those things like they really set the tone in this movie. You don't get that anywhere else in the franchise other than the original film, in my opinion. And then maybe in '84 when they kind of brought that back to the 54 in terms of tone. But other than that, I think it was said in the chat earlier, GMK as well did also honor that ferocious sort of tone. But yeah, man, there's so many thematical elements in this movie that do carry on to future films. The sort of, I liken it to, now this happened in the original film, and also happened in King Kong versus Godzilla. But the themes they would kind of hone in on the end of the movie, right? How we need to be kinder to each other, whatever the theme may be, right? Whatever they hit home at the end. This one sort of felt the most hopeful, but at the same time being very melancholic in a way. And I'll touch on that a little later when we get into the music aspect. But yeah, that's my kind of take on the significance and relevance. Very similar ideas. I feel like we're all going to have sort of same ideas. But Leslie, please, if you would.
Oh, I think that the significance of this film is basically what we just talked about. Again, world building. where they brought in Mothra in this film. The next film they brought in Rodan, and they started to bring in
Yep.
alien monsters with King Ghidorah and started to expand the universe, and which we got the Awesome Show series because of it. But I also think that this film is the perfect balance. I know Dave has said it many times before that everything came together, but that is really a true statement. The film is not too gloomy like 54. It's not super goofy over the top like the 70s films. It's not like a film that's kind of missing the mark like Godzilla Raids Again. It has elements of pretty much everything that you would want in a movie. Not just a kaiju movie, but a movie in general. A little bit of comedy, not too much, drama, horror a little bit, lightheartedness, whatever. It just strikes that balance of being, in my opinion, the perfect movie. So I think it's real significant because of that. And I think, it's really important because after this film, that's when they started making Godzilla films on a yearly basis. Because remember, King Kong vs. Godzilla happened 2 years earlier. But after Mothra vs. Godzilla, then we got Ghidorah, Monster Zero, Sea Monsters, Son of Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters, and they started building from there. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet with this, but I think that is what its main significance is. That it's a perfect movie. It touches on so many different genres, and it basically established it established Godzilla more as a star by cranking out more awesome and incredible movies after Mothra vs. Godzilla. So that's why I think that's the importance and significance of this film. Now, the fourth question is, let's all give our specific take or one take on a specific aspect from this film. And I know David and Jonathan, you already got your aspects already planned out. So David, take it away.
Sure. There's so many aspects that I can talk about that I love about this film, but I think one of the main reasons that many of us gravitate towards this film is because Godzilla's design, and that means the Godzilla suit.
Amen.
It's so good. It's so well done. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. I have a couple of notes here. So the suit was designed by the Yagi brothers and a man called Izo Kaimai. They were responsible for creating the 64 suit. And instead of just making the suit and then fitting Nakajima into the suit, they actually made the suit around molds of Nakajima's body. And I think our producer may have a few there they come. There's the initial sketch. I'm not sure if that's one of the Yagi brothers, but it may be. That's the original painting, and they're creating the actual suit to be more fluid and be more to be easier for Nakajima to emote and to maneuver and battle and do all the things that he couldn't really do that well in any film before that. Definitely not the 54. He was a little bit better in the 55, and then the 62 got really big and bulky again. It was hard for him to emote in that suit and act in there. But the suit itself, it's just aesthetically pleasing to all of us. I mean, as I mentioned before, it's slimmed down. It's got a long, beautiful, sinuous tail. The face is decidedly menacing. Someone had mentioned the eyebrows, not in a very flattering way, but I love the eyebrows. The eyebrows sort of give it that evil scowl, that constant evil scowl. The actual construction of the face. Now we talked about this in the opening sequence where Godzilla rises out of the sand and he shakes and the jowls kind of do a little jiggle thing that looked kind of realistic. But the way that happened is, you may or may not know this, the Nagoya Castle scene was filmed before that scene, and as we all know, Nakajima sort of crashes into the castle and he hits that part of the face into the castle, and it shakes loose from the foundation. There's Nakajima getting into the suit itself. And what happens is they didn't know or think to repair it right away. So they when Godzilla did the shake in that scene, the jowls were sort of a little bit loose, but I think it worked. I think it was a happy accident. It looked more realistic to me.
Absolutely.
But that's one of the things I like about it, the suit. The eyes are bigger. They're sort of like they're sort of like a dead stare, like shark eyes almost, and they have the clear lenses over the pupils. I just love the proportion of the feet, the claws, the dorsal plates. Everything to me I'm going to say it, the quintessential Godzilla suit for me. I just love it. And clearly Tsuburaya thought so, because in essence, this suit was reused again for Ghidorah the three-headed monster. Just the face, the head was a little bit retooled. The eyes and the mouth are a little tiny bit retooled. And this 64 suit was also used as Jiras. So Jiras from Ultraman, comprised of the 64 suit and the 66 head combined, which is kind of an interesting combination. So, and I believe Gomez also utilized the 64 suit. So it was used for Mothra versus Godzilla, Ghidorah the three-headed monster, Gomez, and Jiras. And I don't think anything else, but those films had the actual body of the suit. The Mothra prop
Great
that
shot.
Leslie was gasping about. Yeah, that is a great shot. The Mothra prop was a wire operated huge marionette. The body of Mothra was 10 feet long and the wingspan was almost 30 feet. So to manipulate that prop, there it is there, that prop to look realistic is just an act of genius, because
Crazy.
when Mothra was hovering over Godzilla, that to me is some of the most realistic, like Toho flapping monsters that I've ever seen. You know, because a lot of the Toho monsters in the future sort of just like kind of do the glide thing, and they like maybe flap once or twice. This Mothra was flapping. It was so realistic that when Mothra was dying and flew back over to the egg, when the technicians were operating her, the way it worked was she was almost like, looked like she was breathing, and then she kind of just like stopped breathing, and then her head kind of went to a tilt. It just was so realistic to me that I just can't believe how they pulled that off. I think Jonathan and I, we talked about this on our own, that we don't think Mothra ever looked better. She looked really, really good in the Tokyo SOS. Don't get me wrong, but as far as Mothra goes, this is my favorite incarnation of Mothra too. I love the way it looked. They improved
Absolutely.
her. They improved her from the 1961. They gave her their eyes are a little bit bigger. Just an amazing thing. And yeah, I think that's really what all I wanted to talk about. One more thing that I want to go back to what Jonathan was saying about the music. It was Ifukube was able to perfectly incorporate Godzilla's theme with Mothra's theme. Just retooled Mothra's theme just a little bit to sort of fit perfectly in there. And because we had heard Mothra's theme in 1961, and they sort of just tweaked it just a little bit, and it fit perfectly into this movie. And yeah, that's it. I mean, I could go on and on, but I'm not going to. The suit is why I love the suit. It's amazing. Jonathan, how about you? What aspect are you going to tell us about?
Well, surprise, surprise. One of the aspects I'm going to talk about is the music of this film.
Music.
Now, the music, shocker, I know. Music is one of my favorite things of this series. Akira Ifukube is one of my favorite composers of all time. He basically got me into the style of music I like to listen to today, which is mostly score music.
Wait, we lost
Leslie. I do
Leslie.
listen to some popular music. We did lose
Aww.
Leslie a little bit. Hopefully he can rejoin us.
I hope so.
But in the meantime, so I chose the music because obviously I love the music, but I chose certain aspects of the music I wanted to kind of touch on, and I believe, Kyle, I shared some photos with you. We'll just go kind of like loosely with them based on what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start with how the movie starts with the main title sequence. One of the few aspects of a Godzilla movie where you don't really see much going on other than atmospheric stuff. So we got the beautiful, I believe this is the big pool, that they're shooting in. This amazing sequence of this typhoon and the storm going on and the rolling waves with the Godzilla theme. It starts out right on the bat with the Godzilla theme, and then it kicks in to Mothra's sort of like marching theme, and it kind of, like David said, it really marries the two together in a really harmonious way. and it's like a brooding sort. I call it like it's like a brooding stalker is sort of like really intense sort of hit on the music that really keeps it going for me. And what's interesting about this movie is there's not a lot of, you get this more in the future films. You get this in Monster Zero especially, and that's where it kind of starts. Where it came in the original film and in King Kong vs. Godzilla a little bit. You get these happy marches, you really hopeful marches that, the military is on their way. They're doing good stuff. You don't get that in this movie.
No.
All minor key, all very serious, all very tonally like, stuff's going down. We're in danger. Brooding, dark, stalker is sort of like, I keep saying that, but that's basically what it feels like to me. So I love this opening main title sequence. I listen to it all the time. It definitely grabs me from the beginning. It like definitely sets the tone of the movie.
Yeah, Jonathan, that this is going to be a dark movie just from that opening. This is not going to be a lighthearted movie.
Opening.
You absolutely know, just because he sets it up for you, man. This is not going to be a pleasant boat ride, man. This is going to be a rough ride, man, because it's dark.
Yeah, it's going to be an emotional ride, and it definitely is an emotional roller coaster.
There's no sort of like bridge into like a hopeful part. I mean, the only thing that is a little bit hopeful is when they go into the Mothra theme, but even that is not like a triumphant music. It's just
very
sort of
intense.
Like dominated by Godzilla's music.
Absolutely. It's sort of like, we're kind of in danger, but maybe there's a sense of hope that we're about to rely on a little bit. And that's why I love Fukube. He was really good at marrying tones together and creating. Hey, what's up? Oh, I'm so glad Leslie came back for this because, again, one of my favorite aspects. So moving along, the next sort of portion I want to talk about, I kind of touched on this with one of my favorite scenes, so I apologize if I'm going on about this, but it is Infant Island. It is when we hear Sacred Springs. I always love that Ifukube kind of turned down the original Mothra because he wasn't sure tonally it was a film he could do properly and create a theme for Mothra. But oh, my friends, he himself was not giving himself enough credit, because when you hear Sacred Springs, you hear the Shobijin, you hear the Ito sisters sing this song, and the Peanuts sing this beautiful song. It really hits home that he could do it. He could basically do anything. And so you hear that sort of music. I love the sort of I would say beautiful, yet very tragic and melancholic at the same time. There's a lot of emotions going on, but that's what makes it, you get the chills going down the spine. There they are right there. They're looking up at our main characters. Very beautiful, very elegant, very they are so good in this movie. And in the original Mothra, so good. I think this is my favorite performance of theirs. It's very like the movie. It's very sorrowful. It's very like they're it's like very tragic for them. It's like there's a lot of trauma there. You don't get that aside from the original Mothra, which is a lot more of a fanciful movie in a lot of ways. This movie, you get their sorrow a lot in just their expressions. It's very subtle, but like very effective. And the music really hones in on that and hits that. Another aspect I want to talk about is, and I know I could go on about the battle tracks in this. You get Mothra versus Godzilla 1 and basically Mothra versus Godzilla 2. And they're both very similar. Actually, they're probably the same. He just reworks certain things. The perfect marriage of two themes coalescing in a battle track. You don't get that a lot in this series. In the series, you could tell he really understood what they wanted to go for in this movie. You tell he understood the tone, what was happening. Again, I will say this. I'll bank off what you said, David. When Mothra's coming at Godzilla, you see from like a low angle Mothra coming down, and that marionette, the way the marionette moves, you see all the little insectoid, arms and like moving, and like it's very insect-like. You don't get that in any other incarnation of Mothra other than the original and Tokyo SOS. The other ones kind of glide. They kind of glide, and I don't want to say phone it in, but probably budget and whatnot they couldn't rely on what they had here, and they were a lot more creative because of that. They found ways to make it work, and boy did it work.
It did.
I love I love the amount of dramatic tension that's imposed here. The music really makes you feel like it's dire for Mothra. You know, Godzilla is going to come out on top here, and in a way, he does. I like to always think of this as kind of a draw in a way because both got their big licks in, but Mothra ultimately succumbs to Mothra's willingness to stay alive for the egg and for her children, and basically, I wouldn't say Godzilla necessarily killed Mothra. Mothra outlasted basically the old age of Mothra and the intenseness of the moment, and that battle really took a toll. And so Godzilla just kind of says, you know, I'm going the opposite. He's like, screw this. I'm done with this. I'm going the other direction.
Shakes it off. Just shakes it off.
He shakes it off and just keeps going. That's another thing about Godzilla's theme is the Godzilla march. You hear it, you know, bam, 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 bam. It's really the first time you hear it syncopated in a way that's like it kind of evokes a march in a way, but I call it, it's like he's very brooding. It's kind of marching to the beat of his own drum. You know, he's coming over in Nagoya and the city, and there's a lot of like in that moment. So I love how the music puts itself there. Very serious, very, very dangerous. And then I think one of the greatest moments of the music of his work, of Ifukube's work, is his intent on showing endings to the movies, how to showcase the ending of the film. And in the ending of the film, I don't think anyone has done a better job showcasing sort of hopeful nature of what's about to happen. We're getting the end of the movie, like they're saying their goodbyes, and it's sort of like it's a happy moment, but it's also very melancholic, and it's also very
reflective.
It's reflective, yeah. It's not like overly like, oh, we did it, guys, let's go, come on. You know, it's very, like David said, perfect example, very reflective, and it showcases the theme of the movie really well. Not the musical theme, but the actual themes of the film and what the characters actually truly say at the end. You know, as humans, we need to learn how to trust each other and coexist and learn to love one another more. And, you know, that's like at the core of the music. And I loved how he did that with every single film that he composed. This goes for everything up to Terror Mechagodzilla. It has this sort of, it's very sad at the end because we've gotten to the finish line, but it's also very hopeful. There's hope for the future. And that's why I love Ifukube's work, because he could show us a lot of moments of levity and really bring us and hone us in on, like, you know, what to truly think about in life and why life is so beautiful. And that's what I take away from this movie in terms of the music. It's very intense, it's very dark, but it's very emotional. It's very much a roller coaster ride, but it's got a lot of emotion in it. And that's why I love this freaking movie so much. It's the only score that I think really, truly is perfect.
It's perfect. The score is perfect.
Perfect.
The score
100%.
is perfect, and there's one series of notes that just illustrates everything you said. Mothra's theme being melancholy and sort of like somber. Doom, 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 doom. It's just so simple, and he just basically plays it on the piano, really, and it just expresses that this is just not your majestic Mothra, you know, fantasy film. This is serious stuff.
There's a lot of nuance to Mothra. You're right, and then you hear that same theme echo when Mothra comes with
the orchestra. They use with the orchestra in there, the full orchestra.
You hear the blaring trumpets, and it kind of evokes this sense that Mothra, we don't know if necessarily Mothra is going to be nice here. Like, it kind of shows a little bit. It's almost like we're as astonished as the characters are. It's like Mothra isn't here to play, right? Mothra might necessarily not help us. We don't know, but that music in that moment, it's like very much reflective on like what is actually happening in that specific scene. And like, I don't know, Mothra is like, I was always kind of startled by that moment. Like when you see Mothra over the hill and through the trees and you hear that.
Yeah, that's Mothra's a little bit scary there. A little bit scary.
Some people might say this, and I completely disagree with them. And I will debate this over the sun with people with the music, is that sometimes you'd hear Ifukube, you'd hear like the blaring trumpets, you know, and some people might go, that sounds a little out of tune. And maybe they're going a little too hard with the sound. And maybe that was a mistake.
Intentional. It's intentional.
It was
absolutely intentional.
It was not a mistake. That is meant. Ifukube was so good at what I call like monster music in general. He was able to create themes for characters.
Perfect.
He was
Look
able
at
to
that.
bring the characters. He brought them to life with the music. So every character had its own specific theme. Every character had its own specific set of characteristics, and you can feel that with the music. And it was like World of Gargantua's, that really
I was going to say that
low
Leslie
brass,
can agree with that. Those trumpets, those overly, emphasized trumpet, that's Gyra, man.
Yep.
That's
trombones.
it's
that's why
not,
I play trombone.
it's not a mistake. It's intentional. It's 100,000% intentional. That is not an oversight. So anybody who thinks that is not right in the head. Anyway, okay, Leslie, how about you? I forgot what we're even talking about now because we're just so into it. What do you find aspects of this movie? Whatever.
Sorry, I had my signal drop and I had to change devices.
Okay.
So y'all can hear me well, right?
You're here now. Yep, perfect.
You're good, totally good.
Okay. Now, originally, I was going to talk about the miniatures, and the miniatures are great in this film. The oil refinery scene, the tower that Godzilla brings down, the incubator scene or the incubator miniatures. Just the miniatures are really, really great. But there is something that I want to talk about and address more, and I want to put a nail in this coffin because I touched about this a few times before.
Do it.
But I want to go ahead and talk about it. And again, this may offend some people, so my advice is just build a bridge and get over it, because I'm going to say what I have to say. I want to talk about the ending of this film and how
good choice.
The ending of this film doesn't get on a lot of people's good sides, because there's this weird mentality that some fans believe that Godzilla should win every single movie that he's in, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the context of the film. Some people feel like Godzilla should never lose. And I am a Godzilla fan, and I think that is a flawed way of thinking. And when I tell people this is my favorite film, the first thing they say, for those people who don't like this film and find it overrated, all the good stuff, the first thing they say is like, well, your Godzilla got beat by 2 babies. Like, that's going to really offend me.
There's a little violin.
Yeah.
A little violin.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Now, honestly, when I first watched it, even as a kid, it didn't bother me. And to this day, it still doesn't bother me because it's the whole David and Goliath thing. And Godzilla, up until that point, when he gets taken out, every single thing they did in Godzilla, in this movie, protected Godzilla and made him a fearsome force that was truly unstoppable. Tanks failed. Airplanes attacking from the sky failed. The multiple military plans failed. The adult Mothra failed. Every single thing that they threw at Godzilla absolutely, totally fails in this film. So I have no problem with Godzilla losing to the Mothra babies because, again, it's David versus Goliath. Now, I'm going to touch upon the previous film of Mothra vs. Godzilla, as well as the later film behind Mothra vs. Godzilla involving the ending. That, again, people have a problem with this ending with Godzilla losing to Mothra, or at least the Mothra babies. But they don't say nothing with Ghidorah losing the exact same way 6 months later. Yes, I admit the Mothra twins were babies, but it's still the same premise in Ghidorah. A highly volatile, gigantic monster gets taken out by multiple smaller monsters. So in my opinion, you can't have a problem with Mothra versus Godzilla. You can't have a problem with Ghidorah and have a problem with Mothra versus Godzilla. Or let's talk about the previous film. We're going to rattle some more nerves with this one, with King Kong versus Godzilla. And I believe that Kong was the winner, or he was the intended winner. But both King Kong versus Godzilla and Mothra ends the same way. All right? The opposing monster dumps Godzilla in the ocean. That opposing monster swims away to his island home. But when some Godzilla, in some Godzilla fans' mind, in Mothra vs. Godzilla, Mothra dumps Godzilla in the ocean. Mothra swims away. Mothra wins. Kong dumps Godzilla in the ocean. Kong swims away. It's a draw. What kind of stupid crap is that? What kind of illogical stuff is that? Honestly. Godzilla losing to Mothra in King Kong. Honestly, there's no shame in losing to King Kong at the time. King Kong was the most popular giant monster in the world, more so than Godzilla in Japan.
Very true.
There's no shame in losing to King Kong in that context. in Mothra versus Godzilla, Godzilla was the hateful, evil villain that was killing everybody. He needed to lose. So again, the circumstances for Godzilla's defeat in both films, I can understand gets on a lot of people's good sides, but just let it go. Let it go. But again, you can't have a problem with one and not have a problem with the other one. So with that being said, just accept the ending for what it is. It
Absolutely.
happened. It happened, and it doesn't change anything for us like Godzilla. Yes, Godzilla got beat by King Kong and Mothra, but he is still king of the monsters. And in Godzilla and Kong's case, Godzilla got his win back a couple years ago. But still, just let it go. Just let it go.
Good point. And Leslie too. It's like, do you ever hear of irony? It's ironic, and that's great filmmaking. Okay, just like you said,
subvert expectation.
All of man's efforts cannot defeat this monster. All of Mothra, you know, in her majesty and her power cannot defeat Godzilla. And the fact that these two innocent things that are spawned from Mothra can can immobilize. I don't think they beat him. He was covered in silk and he fell off the side. I mean, that would happen to anybody, and it's ironic. That's part of the storytelling. And
they both drove him away. Both Kong and Mothra drove Godzilla away.
Yeah, they did.
That's a win, no matter how you look at it.
It is a win. It is a win, and also, little tiny tidbit, the actual suit that goes over the cliff is actually the 1962 suit. It's not, because that's more suited for the water than the actual 64 suit.
Like, let's save the 64.
Save it. So that if you look carefully at that last scene when Godzilla he's on the ground, he's covered with silk, then they cut to right before he goes over. It's actually the 62 suit, and you will see it if you look carefully.
I did not know that, actually. That's a really good bit of information.
Yep. And also, Leslie, when I was a little boy, when I was like 7 or 8, I wanted Godzilla to win, and I was really upset. But I evolved and I grew up, and now I love the fact that Godzilla was defeated by two, smaller, David and Goliath type characters. It's like, when you're a kid, I was really upset when I was a kid. It totally bummed me out. And same thing with King Kong versus Godzilla. If I'm honest, that still bugs me a little bit. But Mothra larvas, covering him with silk going over, I think it's the epitome of irony, and it's great. And I think that it's great storytelling, and you gotta just, like you said, get over it, man, or not, whatever. But
you can't have a problem with one and not have a problem with the other one. Again, some fans truly believe that in this film, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Mothra dumps Godzilla in the ocean, Mothra swims away, Mothra wins. But when you talk about Kong, it's a draw. Or Kong was swimming away in fear. You can't do that.
No, I mean, you can sort of make it up in your head, make scenarios up in your head. But you're absolutely right. The Japanese filmmakers intended for Kong to be the victor because he was the more popular monster, and Godzilla was just a fledgling at that point. This was only his third movie, so they had no idea that the longevity of Godzilla would go on and on and on.
Absolutely.
That film did contribute to it greatly, I might say, but I hope we haven't lost too many people in the chat, because we're just going off on tangents. But I love every minute of it.
No, it's all part of the discussion. What I love about it is that we can riff off one another. The one thing I wanted to add, Leslie, and to David, can nobody appreciate strategy anymore? Like, the Mothra larva, they coordinated this wonderful little strategy. It was a chess match where they were basically hiding in between the caves and going in between the rocks. And Godzilla, for as big as Godzilla was, could not really figure out where the other one was at any given time. No. And they were doing a real good job. It was almost like a pincer attack. Nobody appreciates strategery anymore.
Strategery,
And that right there, like you said, David and Goliath. It's a perfect example of David and Goliath. I always said that to people, when I would talk about this movie, like, oh, Godzilla lost to two worms. I'm like, well, first of all, they're not worms. First of all. Second of all, that's a big misstep. Second of all, it's all strategy. It's subverting expectation. And like David said, that is really good writing.
It's irony. And also, if you really want to fast forward and you're really upset that Godzilla lost that battle, one of the Mothra larvas didn't make it. Remember in Ghidorah, there's like, how the two little boys, they're like, so how are the Mothra twins? Well, one didn't make it. So Godzilla actually mortally wounded one of them. to the point where
It died.
It died. So there you go,
very
people.
dark,
One of them's dead. One of them's dead. One of them's dead.
Very happy way of saying that one has bit the bucket. But like, okay, damn.
Yeah.
Well, geez.
Yeah, but
you know why? It was when Godzilla's tail went smack right down on him. That was like, he was like kind of like never recovered from that, even though he got a couple more, silk,
Did the larva get CTE, I guess, when
I don't know. The larva was messed up.
It was just born, so I guess it being flailed and smashed to the ground probably gave it some internal bleeding. But I also believe that it would have been overload. I think it would have been overload for Ghidorah to fight 4 monsters. You know what I mean? So I think that's what
David is just making it up. Oh, I am not. I'm not. That's the truth. That Mothra larva is dead. You watch Ghidorah. The little kid's like, how are the Mothra larvas? We're sorry, one's dead. Essentially what they say. So
right. All right, so let's go to the final question of the discussion, and let's talk about, we are on Collect All Monsters, and this is more so a collectible show, even though we are branching out and start doing a movie discussion, which we'll do more of, quite frankly. Trust me, Mothra vs. Godzilla will not be the only. Yeah, it won't be the only monster movie that we will cover on this show in long form with different guests and different opinions. This is the first of many to come. I think King Kong versus Godzilla was technically the first, but
we sort of did that. Yeah, we did do that one.
Yeah. So, but more are coming. More are coming. You never know. We may reach out to you. If you're a fan of a certain movie, we may ask you to come aboard and join and talk about your thoughts on that particular movie. But let's talk about some of our favorite collectibles from this film. Are we doing top 3, top 5? Like, what are we doing, fellas? Because I only got 3. But if you got more than 3, you want to do your top 5? You're more than welcome.
Real quick, just so everybody out there knows that we're not completely crazy. There are aspects of this movie that we don't like, that miss the mark a little bit. So can we each give one that something that we don't love about this movie, just so everybody knows that we're not like, everything's great, everything's good. There are a few aspects of this film that don't really work and that maybe could have been executed a little bit better. I'll go first. It bugs me that in the very last scene where the Mothra larvas, we were just talking about it, are chasing or going after Godzilla up the side of the cliff, they start to cover him with the webs, right? And they keep doing it, and he's got webbing all over him. It's like coming off his back and his dorsal plates. And then all of a sudden, the editors just, I guess, get a brain fart, and then they cut to a scene where he's got no silk on him. It's like, ouch, 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 ouch. I don't like that. Just cut that out. I don't know who was sleeping at the wheel, but the thing that bugs me is they were so attuned and had such attention to detail that to let something like that slip out is just a little bit annoying to me. But anyway, that's mine. Anybody else have any?
Yeah, I actually do. I have a pretty significant one. And David, it's so funny you said that, because I always thought about stuff like that, the continuity stuff, as I see that stuff, and I'm not just
when the movie's that good, Jonathan. When the movie's that good, we have to be nitpicky.
It's not bad to be critical about something that you love, and there's always nothing's perfect. No one's perfect, and nothing is ever perfect.
Nope.
I always joke. I always say like it's a perfect movie, and yes, in a lot of ways it is, in my opinion. But there are technical aspects of it that I tend to overlook because of how epic this movie is and how much I love it. But they are still there. One of them being the optical printing effects in this movie. Now I understand
uneven, a little bit uneven.
I fully understand that Tsuburaya had always wanted a legit optical printer, something he could use to mat in shots for the movie. And I love the tenacity of him going out and purchasing his own and getting it, bringing it in and basically experimenting with this movie with it. And it works in some instances, but majority of the time it doesn't. You see him kind of fading out in the background. The lighting doesn't match up as you can see it a lot in the factory scene. You see him juxtaposed against the factory. There's a quick little scene. I will say it's a good mat, but when he pops his head over, it was one of my favorite scenes. But he pops his head over, you can see a little bit of you can see transparency there. You can see a little bit of it. But I will say overall, for their first attempt,
it's fine. But
like, look, to like it. You know, and look, they had very short amount of time. I'm not making excuses, but let's just face the reality. They didn't have a lot of time to make these films, and post production, which usually goes on for about 6 months or more, they didn't have that kind of time. So really, stuff is being really condensed, and they're having to kind of, rush a lot of aspects. For what they did with the movie, with the amount of time they had to pre-production, production, and post, doing marketing, getting the movie out.
Yeah,
and we're not talking about like editing on a computer. We're talking about
it's all
cutting the
practical
negatives.
stuff. Yeah,
it's all
absolutely.
you're using the film reels. You're cutting it. You're pacing it yourself. You're doing the obstacle work yourself. You're putting in the blast effect. You're putting in all that stuff. It's all coming out.
No,
it's
fair
all
enough.
being done by an artist on a little. But I will say it's okay to criticize it
because I just don't want us to be like, oh my God, everything is perfect. I know that there are some things that aren't exactly perfect in this film. And Leslie, do you have any, or just want to?
It's a curveball.
That's why I've been having this look on my face. I'm trying to find, and I understand what you're saying, that we don't want to feel like, or at least say like there's nothing wrong with this film, it's perfect, and but I don't care what people think, so I'm just gonna say this film is perfect. I don't see anything wrong with it. And you know what? I take it back.
That's okay.
It's perfect, but it's perfect. But
nearly perfect.
Nearly perfect. But the one thing I would change, I wish they would have came out and said that what they found in the beginning of the film was a Godzilla skin more so. That's obviously what it was, but they never really explained what it was. We knew it was radioactive. We knew it kind of looked like it has Godzilla coloring, but after they were decontaminated from the object, they really didn't explain what it was. And I wish they would have came out just one simple line. Once Godzilla appears, they should be like, oh, so that's what that thing was. It was probably a piece of Godzilla. But they never attempted to explain what it was. That's the only thing I wish they would have done differently.
That's a really good point. And the fact that we mentioned a few technical things, it's insignificant because I don't think there's anything wrong with the cast. There's nothing wrong with the story, except for explaining what that thing is. I agree. And there's nothing wrong with the overall tone. Everything else falls together. And I just want to talk about the cast real quick, and then we'll do the end. So, of course, we all love this cast. And I consider this an ensemble cast, even though there's three main protagonists. But, of course, Akira Takarada is Ichiro Sakai, great character. Yuriko Hoshi, Jonathan's favorite, is Junko.
Love her.
Nakanishi, that's her last name, Nakanishi. They don't think they mentioned that in the film. Okay. Hiroshi Koizumi plays Shunsuke Miura. I can't even pronounce his last name. Miura. 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 Yes. That's hard to say. And of course, the egg-loving comedy relief is Yu Fujiki. I'm so sorry. No. Who's? Yeah, that's the egg-loving reporter. Jiro Nakamura is his name, believe it or not.
Yeah.
A monster egg.
A monster egg, yeah. Kenji Sahara, the great Kenji Sahara, who's been in like more Godzilla movies than any other actor, is Jiro Torahata, of course. And Jun Tazaki is the grouchy editor of the newspaper. And
he's so cool.
Yoshifu Hajima is the great entrepreneur Kumiyama. And those are the main cast members. And then we see all of the Toho supporting actors, like we see the actor who played Kono. He's one of the fishermen. I just think that the casting and the ensemble cast, the old chief from Infant Island is the same actor who played the part in Mothra. Just so great. Oh no, I'm sorry. He reprises it in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. It's a different actor in Mothra. But
yeah.
I just love seeing the Toho cast of characters. I think they shine the brightest in this particular movie, and they all have their moment in the sun. And again,
great chemistry.
Great chemistry. Okay,
Yeah.
done. I just had to mention it.
They're
Even
all
though
heavy hitters.
Even though I butchered some of the names.
No, David. They're all heavy hitters. Like I think that's another reason why we love this movie so much is that every character is so good at, like Leslie said, well acted. They have great chemistry, and they're some of the biggest stars in the tokusatsu genre, like in the movies themselves. Like, when have you seen a cast other than maybe Monster Zero? I wouldn't even say Destroy All Monsters. I would not even say that. Like, we get a lot of heavy hitters in this movie.
Son of Godzilla is one of them. Son of Godzilla.
Yeah, Son of Godzilla. That's true.
King Kong Escapes is one of them.
Oh yeah, forgot about that one.
It would have been interesting if they would have included an American star, not just one of the military people in the frontier missile
Not
scene.
Russ
like
Tamblyn. Not Russ Tamblyn.
Not Russ Tamblyn. No.
Anyone but him. It could be any. It could be like.
Him, but it's
Nick Adams. Nick Adams could have done.
I would have loved to have seen Nick Adams be somebody in this. You know, he would have killed it. But
Yeah.
somebody. Anyway, okay. So let's move on. What Leslie was saying. Our top 3 or 5 or however we're doing.
I only got 3, but if y'all got 5, tell them. But what are your top favorite Mothra versus Godzilla collectibles?
Well, I know Leslie's probably going to show the ones that we both have collectively that we both love, the heavy hitters, the big guys.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show something that I know you are.
I love how the camera cut to you saying that real quick and then cut back. That was great.
Heavy hitters.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show a few things that I don't show off very often, and they're kind of, a little bit obscure. I'm going to show you my very first 1964 Godzilla collectible, and it's pretty humble, but I love it. It's the standard Bandai 1964.
Yes.
This is a classic. I saved the tag. I got this at Forbidden Planet in New York City. I think it was like $10, around $10, $9.99. I think the price tag is not on this tag, but I have it on some of the other ones. But I love this figure. My very absolute first 1964 Godzilla collectible. And then I'm going to show you something really cool. I'm pretty sure I got this from Sean Lincolnback. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I did. And it's kind of rare. It is the original British lobby card for Godzilla versus the Thing.
Ooh.
And the ones with Godzilla front and center are the ones that are really highly sought after, and everybody wants them. So it's a mint condition. It's a colorized, image of one of our favorite scenes. Godzilla is not quite that big, but I mean, it's still an awesome piece. And the thing about the British lobby cards, they actually are on a little bit smaller scale than some of the US and Japanese ones. So the original British Godzilla versus the Thing lobby card, one of them. And then just 2 more things. Marmot Monster Heaven Godzilla glow in the dark. Don't show this guy very much because he's kind of in the back of my glowy shelf, but he's really cool.
Yeah.
I got him from Mike Johnson, like 1999, 1998, around there. Really cool. Great proportions, really great figure, and he really does glow. And then one final thing I'm going to show is the Marmot giant scale or large size Godzilla. And this, Leslie, you might even like this one. It's kind of like sort of melds the line between like realistic and stylized. He's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
I love the face.
I like to bring him to outdoor locations and take photos because he's really cool. But everybody gives me looks because, like, where's that thing? Where's that dinosaur? Why you got a dinosaur over there? It's like, shut up, mind your business. Anyway,
Is it the Showa wall?
No, with the Showa wall, he usually goes to like Gasworks Park, and I will post a picture that I'm very proud of that I took a few years ago at Gasworks Park of this guy. So yeah, that's it. I mean, I got a bunch of heavy hitters. Leslie will show you those because we kind of have the same ones. But Jonathan, what are you going to show us? What are you going to show us?
Okay, so I have quite a few things, but I only picked like a small little handful of stuff. And a lot of them are not figures. I wanted stuff that would not be figures. And these are things that are near and dear to my heart and really pull out the nostalgia element for me and my childhood in a lot of ways. First up being one of my favorites, the Paramount VHS, Paramount Gateway VHS tape. Now, this artwork I absolutely love. I used to go to Suncoast Video and like just drool over these when I was a kid, and I would get them, and I had to get this one a couple years ago, re-get it because I had lost the one I had since I was a kid. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe years ago, yard sale or whatever. I don't know. I was just being a dumb kid. So now, thankfully, I have it back. It's here with the wrong title, but that's fine.
Cool.
I don't care. It's still great. I love
That's
it.
awesome.
The next item is another piece of media that is very near and dear to me because, like David said earlier, Steal the Thunder, we have one of the only ways you can truly watch the Frontier missile scene
licensed way to watch
that's
it.
licensed,
Yeah,
and get that wonderful moment when they cut off the Shobijin singing Sacred Springs, which I do not like, but it's in here. This is the classic media. I believe it was part of it was the set. I forget what the set was called. It was the Godzilla collection, right?
yes.
It's called the Godzilla collection. It came with Gojira. It came with Raids Again. It came with
Monster Zero.
Monster Zero.
Terror.
And then there was All Monsters Attack was in there, I think.
Godzilla's Revenge, All Monsters Attack, and Terror of Mechagodzilla. It was kind of a weird random.
It was a weird random, but I feel like if they would have left out All Monsters Attack, and I'm not trying to dog that movie, but whatsoever, but tonally, they all would have worked harmoniously together, even with Terror of Mechagodzilla, because Terror of Mechagodzilla was like, that's a true Honda film. Like you watch that and you're like, we're back to form, really. And that was like, they all kind of have a very similar tone.
When they came out, when that set came out, Jonathan, I was stoked because that was the best way to watch it at that particular time.
Just
really
the
well
inside
done.
of it.
Really, that's
it was
the classic media set. Yes.
Classic media, and what I appreciate about this set more than anything is the presentation, the packaging. Everything is so well put together. It's wonderful material. It's not cheap.
No.
You know, inside we got beautiful artwork here, beautiful artwork to the right of me here, and we have a little slip that goes on here.
Yes, we do.
So it's pretty cool.
Outstanding.
Has the logos on it and everything. I just love this whole set. It's great. Another thing I like to showcase.
Yes, they are, Kyle. Very good.
Very good. Yes. So here we have. This is a part of the Akira Ifukube film collection. It doesn't just encompass Godzilla movies. It encompasses most of his career as a film composer. And so we have compilation albums. And these compilation albums here you see Mothra versus Godzilla. Beautiful art by Yuji Kaeda. Wonderful artwork. And we have here on the top, some of you may know, but most of you may not know, The Whale God. Another Ifukube wonderful
I know
score,
of it, but I've not seen it. I've never seen it.
It's got great music. I highly recommend you just YouTube it and listen to the score. Great score. 1962 for that one. Also, not surprising, another one we have is the Waxwork.
That's a beautiful
record.
Cover. That's new,
sure
right? You just got that.
This is the artist. I forget his name. It's slipping my mind at the moment, but he did all the entire set, and it's very much aesthetically, it's all very similar. He's got the right references and versions of all of the monsters. They look stylized to his sort of liking, but they're also very much like the film itself.
Let's see that Godzilla up close. Can you make that closer, the Godzilla itself?
Oh.
You know what? He referenced the puppet for that.
He did.
He referenced the puppet, which is totally fine, but it's kind of an interesting choice.
And even Mothra. Look how great Mothra looks.
I love Mothra, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny that he chose to reference the actual puppet instead of the suit. That's funny.
Absolutely. And then even on the back, he did a little stylization here, but I absolutely love it because he gets the whole point, like, get off my tail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that moment is so, and I love how they just add these little moments. Also, can I just say, I love in a lot of these vinyls, sometimes they have especially with US releases, they have a problem with putting the text everywhere. It's like word vomit all over the thing, and you can't see that. You can barely appreciate the art. They put it all in the back for you.
It's nice. It's like really classy.
And I'll post it at a later date. But you've all seen the inside of the vinyl. Vinyls are really, the discs themselves are really cool.
Love
now,
it.
just some other quick things I wanted to show off. It has to be the Passion Tank.
Oh yeah.
This is the blank version.
Oh yeah.
Of the 64. Now this.
I've got some passion. I got a little bit of passion too.
Sorry, I think I was muted there. I just love this thing. It's amazing. Everything about it just speaks to me.
I'm happy to have
I
one.
want to get someone to paint this eventually. It's going to get painted eventually. By who? I don't know, but we'll see.
I'm not your Sofubi guy. I am not the Sofubi guy you're looking
I
for.
have a few people in mind, but another great here is the Giga Brain, the translucent gray with the yellow. It's a glowy too. We got a sort of a mixed parts thing going on
I
here.
remember when you got that one. Yeah.
Here, I just love this guy. I love his little cute little mug here. Looking droopy as ever, but looks very much like he does in the movie with those eyes that are just kind of looking upwards. Very mean, very menacing, even with how cute he is.
He looks like the Pilot Ace almost.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Very similar.
We have, I believe this is Marmot.
Marmot Monster Heaven.
Yep. And I it's funny. I remember the moment I got this, or the moment where before I got this, I was talking to David and Nick, and I showed them this on Mandarake, and they were both like, "Oh, bro." It was like, it's totally your colorway. And I was like, it is. And I wasn't really sure about the brown here, but as soon as I got it in hand, I was like, yo, this thing, like all together, it's probably my favorite. Cause to me, it kind of evokes a little bit of the emergence here. It's a little bit of sort of like callback here with the brown. So this is probably my favorite sculpt all together in terms of how he looks proportionally with the face and everything, the sculpting, the detail. Just love it. And I have to shamelessly show just a little bit here. I got this at G-Fest last year.
Oh, yeah.
I want to get one of those.
I will say I get a lot of comments on this when I wear it at work. People are like, oh, I love your shirt. Or I get, oh, I like your shirt. They don't necessarily know what the hell it is, but they're like, oh, I like your shirt. I'm like, yeah, you're damn right you like the shirt because it's Godzilla.
You got good taste.
I have to say this. I have to shout out my beautiful and talented wife. A lot of collectibles are worth a lot and whatnot, but I consider this to be very priceless. For my birthday, she just uses negative space with the glass, and she uses ink, and she painted a very, very, very nice Mosu Goji for me here.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That's a keeper.
On my whiskey glass, so I can have whiskey with Godzilla all the time.
That's
That's it for me, my friends. Sorry I took a little long there.
That's all right. Hey.
But Leslie, please, without further ado, show us the epicness.
Let's see the big guns. Let's see the big guns
that I want.
Well, only got 3 of them. And Kyle, if you can hear me, could you post some of the pictures? I'm going to talk about the 25 centimeter X+1 first. I think that is a great figure. I think it's highly underrated. That one, because I think again, we tend to celebrate the 30 centimeter, which is arguably one of the best, if not the best S+ figures of all time. But I don't think enough love is shown towards the 25. You know what I mean? And when you pair him up against Mothra, like that is just perfect. You know what I'm saying? Seeing the 25 centimeter 64 Godzilla up against Mothra with the egg
that's
there.
Great. That's a great scale. Yeah.
Yeah, it is absolutely perfect. So I want to give an honor mention to him. But my third would be, again, you got Mothra here, but it would be the 25 centimeter Mothra 1964. I tend to display her like that, her draped over the body before she takes her last breath.
That's amazing.
In the film, because again, you can display Mothra in the air, or you could take the rod off and use this setup. I actually got this idea from fellow Mothra vs. Godzilla fan, Mr. Fresh Vinyl himself, Richard Iso. So I kind of display her like that when I'm doing pictures or whatever.
Good.
Love it.
Number 2 would be the M1 50 centimeter rubber model kit of Godzilla 1964. You've seen it many times before on my channel. Look at
beautiful. Look at that thing.
Look at that. Oh, God, yeah, that one is so awesome. And for the longest time, I thought that I would never find a Godzilla 64 collectible or Mosu Goji collectible that could top this one. However, thank you to AJ Russo, David Dopko, and my beautiful wife Sandra. I present to you my favorite Mothra vs. Godzilla collectible of Godzilla himself with the 40 centimeter resin model kit of the Mosu Goji. That is, oh God, oh, that
he's a beauty.
That one is oh my God. And again, to have David paint it, what I'm saying, not only is he a great friend of mine, we're co-hosts together, basically like family.
That's a great angle.
But the fact that he, you know, he understands Mothra versus Godzilla. He loves it as much as I do. So he knows what it would take to bring this thing to life. And he did an absolutely perfect job of bringing this thing to life. And for those who missed out on this kit, you know, there are rumblings that Akira Ibaraki will be reissuing this kit sometime in the future.
Let's hope.
So if you missed out on it, I mean, keep your ear to the ground on the Kaiju Kit Builders Club or the various Kaiju Kits or the various Kaiju Kit Facebook groups that's out there. And once he comes up for a pre-order, do what you got to do and just secure it. And then there are plenty of artists in our community that would love to build it, paint it for you. You know, you have David, if he's up to commissions. You got Marcellus Winters, Mark Sane Gang. Get the kit and then worry about how you're going to build it and paint it later. Because this, in my opinion, I think David will agree, is the quintessential muscle goji of all time. So those are my top favorite collectibles of this awesome film of Mothra versus Godzilla.
But wait, I got to show a little love to the larvas. A little love to the larvas. Jonathan, I showed you this when you were over here.
Yes.
This is a Kyoto resin. I'm sorry, rubber kit that I filled with resin, and would go in great in scale with your set, Leslie.
Yeah.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
You know what? I wish I had them, but you know, that's like one of the last few things I'm looking for as far as like X Plus. If I find them, great. If I don't, then that's fine. But if you want to sell them at some point, just call me.
Could happen.
Just let me know. But you know what? That's gonna pretty much do it for this show. I want to thank every single person that has been here from the jump of this stream. Thank you so much as us fans talk about our favorite movie, one of the best movies in the franchise. I think even the most jaded of Godzilla fans will admit that this is a really good movie. Yes, you may not love everything about the movie. You may have some nitpicky issues with the movie, but I think pretty much overall, this film is universally loved and universally regarded as one of the greatest of all time because it is just that. You know what I'm saying? And it's a standout entry in the Godzilla franchise. That's right, Godzilla. Yeah, we're honoring you right now, good sir. But yeah, that is why we love Mothra vs. Godzilla. So I want to give a huge shout out and thank you. Of course, Kyle Yount, he's a producer of this show. Thank you so much, good sir. You did a fabulous job. Of course, our resident Ifukube, right there, in my opinion, the Green Ranger, the 6th Power Ranger, Jonathan Portman. Thank you for being here. Of course, David F. Dopko, man, again. You've been gone for a minute, and again, our thoughts and prayers were with you with what you were going through. But you came back on a great high note. So again, I hope that this was able to be kind of like therapy for you in a lot of ways. So before we get up out of here, just give us your final thoughts. David, go.
I just love doing it with the three of you. I mean, with the two of you, 3 of us doing it together. When we proposed to do this, we were going to do it on the actual date. And Leslie wasn't available, so we're like, nope, can't do it. It doesn't matter if we do it on the exact date. We got to get this guy in here because he is infectious and he loves it as much as we do. And I think the only other person that we could have had join us is probably Rich Iso, because Rich Iso has always been a huge fan of Mothra vs. Godzilla. But as Leslie said, we're going to do this again with a different cast, with different movies. I do want to be involved in Monster Zero. I got to say that, but Terror of Mechagodzilla, yeah, there it is. Yeah, and that Gamera movie. I don't think I'm going to be a part of that one. That's Gamera versus Giron, I think. But anyway, it was a pleasure and an honor to be here with both of you. Love you guys. And Kyle, thank you so much for producing. It was outstanding. And Jonathan, what do you got to say? Any final words?
Well, I gotta say, I gotta echo what you guys said. You know, this has been an absolute roller coaster. This is exactly how I thought it would go, and more. Being with you guys and talking about this stuff, especially one of my favorite movies, my all-time favorite it's so special, and to just feed off the infectiousness and the love, I can't get enough of it. And thank you to everyone in the chat who stuck around. You know, you guys are the OGs. You guys are the true heroes. Kyle, thank you so much behind the scenes for making us shine in every way possible. I just love doing this with you guys, and I love that we did this. And thank you for including me. This was an absolute blast.
And finally, for me, again, thank you to everybody. You know, we can't thank you enough because without y'all, there is no Collect All Monsters. So without y'all support, your unwavering
Amen.
and rock solid support, we wouldn't be doing what we do, you know, going on 4 years at this point. So thank you so much that has stayed with us, have been down with us since day one. And I hope you're enjoying this Collect All Monsters multiple shows, because, you know, Sandra and I did our thing last night with Spiral Studios. You get the Mothra vs. Godzilla discussion here, but we're not done with Collect All Monsters. Next week is our month episode, our May episode, and it's going to be a Q&A where we're going to take questions from you guys, from the supporters. So what you need to do is go on the Collect All Monsters, Monster Collectors Facebook group, and post your questions on what you want us to talk about on the show next week. Okay. Since the show is next week, I would say maybe the cutoff date to submit your questions would be, so we can round them up, I would say maybe Wednesday or Thursday. David, you think that's good?
Yeah, Wednesday or Thursday would be great, because that'll give us at least a full day to sort of curate them and get them, you know, in some kind of an order so we can answer them. And if you guys had fun, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We keep forgetting to say that, but we're going to say it from now on. And because we love doing this stuff for you guys, and we love having you tell your friends about us. I think that was actually Christine's line. And should all three of us try to do Kyle's line? I'll start. Are we all done? Are we all done? Should I do it?
Go for it, man.
Until next time.
Our planet may be doomed. Our Earth devastated. The monsters are in revolt, and civilization is in chaos. We must unite. Say it with me. And collect all